Hi, welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. On this podcast, we're going to start talk about the supply curve for labor, the supply curve for labor. So we did talk about the demand for labor on some other videos. Now we got to think about the supply side of labor. And the supply side of labor brings up some interesting trade-offs, and that is the trade-off between work and leisure. The trade-off between work and leisure, and this trade-off behind work and leisure, that's going to be working in the background behind the supply for labor. So, okay, first let's think about what I mean when I say the supply of labor. The supply of labor means my willingness to go work for somebody, to supply my labor in the marketplace, to be willing to go work for somebody, and under what conditions would I do that? And so when I think about my willingness to supply labor, which of course we call work, what that does is that highlights the trade-off, because if I want to go to work, then that means that I'm going to be losing leisure time. And if I want to engage in leisure, that means that I'm going to be losing the money that I could have earned if I was working. And so the opportunity cost, that's my OC here, the opportunity cost of leisure is the money that you could have earned if you would not have been enjoying the leisure time. So every time you enjoy leisure time, you go home for the weekend and, you just kind of sit around, hang out, not do very much, relax, hang out with friends, watch TV, etc. That leisure time, you could have been earning money. You could have been earning money during that time, and that money that you earned was given up. Okay, that's the opportunity cost idea. So if we're going to draw this on a graph, then we're going to say this. If we're going to draw this on a graph, then we're going to say any time that wages go up. So, all right, let's go back to my graph here. Here's wage on the vertical axis, and here's the amount of labor being supplied to the marketplace on the horizontal axis. That's the amount that I'm willing to go work, or that that other people are willing to go work. And as the wage goes up, and this might sound really simple to you, you might think as the wage goes up, then people are willing to work more. They're willing to work more hours to earn more money. More people are willing to enter the market to work, to provide labor as the wage goes up. So that's true, and it just kind of appears obvious that would be the case. But let's think about it with respect to leisure. Remember, if a wage goes up, that's going to increase the opportunity cost of leisure. So think about it this way. I'm going to go home on Saturday afternoon, and I'm not going to work. I'm going to hang out, watch TV, play cards, eat a little bit, hang out with my friends, whatever. And I'm going to do that for 10 hours on Saturday. I'm just going to hang out. All right? Now, during those 10 hours, maybe I could have earned $7 an hour. So I gave up $70 to engage in that leisure time, because I could have earned $7 an hour times 10 hours of that leisure time. But now let's say this. Let's say the wage goes up to $10. If the wage goes up to $10, if that's the pay wage that I give up, now if I take that time off Saturday afternoon, 10 hours of Saturday that I don't work, that leisure time now costs me $10 an hour times 10 hours. Now I lost $100 in wages that I could have made. See, so the higher the wage, the higher the opportunity cost of taking leisure time, which means of not working. And if I'm taking that leisure time and not working, and I'm giving up that wage, well, the higher that wage becomes, the more costly it is for me not to go to work. Okay? The more costly it is for me to enjoy leisure time. Well, if the cost, economics tells us this, if the cost of anything goes up, then we'll do it less. If the cost of leisure goes up, then I'll engage in less leisure. If you increase the opportunity cost of leisure, then that means that I'm going to engage in less leisure, which is the same thing as saying that I'm going to work more. So just keep this in mind when you're thinking about this supply curve. As the wage goes up, that means I'm going to engage in less leisure. Leisure becomes more costly, so I will engage in less leisure, and that means that I will work more, which moves me along this supply curve. Okay, so that's where this supply curve for labor comes from. The higher the wage, The higher the opportunity cost of leisure, the less leisure time that I want, the more I'm willing to work, and therefore I move out along the supply curve, okay? The higher the wage, the more people are willing to work. So that's generally true, but just keep in mind that leisure is going on in the background. Leisure is an important part of that equation. Now, I say over here, what is life all about? So at some point, okay, for most people, it is true. The supply curve, it's kind of going like this, right? And for most people, the higher the wage, the more they're willing to work. But at some point, you make so much money, such a high wage. Like let's be crazy about this. Let's say you make $10,000 an hour. Well, my goodness, if I get to the point that I'm making $10,000 per hour, I might only work 100 hours in a week, or I might only work 200 hours, 100 hours in a year, maybe 200 hours a year, something like this. That is to say this. As the wage that you get paid goes up and up and up and up, the supply curve might bend back on itself. Okay? So what I'm saying is this. For most people, as their wages go up, they work more. That's a normal supply curve. But you get to a point where your wages go up so high that as your wages go up, you actually work less. Okay? You actually reduce the amount that you're working because your wages are so high. I mean, just be the extreme. Let's just kind of be crazy. If you made $1 million an hour, then you might work 5 hours a year, and now you got $5 million, and that's plenty of money, so I'm not going to bother working anymore, right? So the higher the wage, the more I work, until your wage gets high enough that higher wages actually cause you to work less. All right, and I just said what life is all about. I mean, I'm being a little silly, but this is where most people would like to be in life, right? Where you actually get paid more and you work less. That'd be a pretty sweet deal. Most people would like this. All right, but that's not where this. By the way, this is called a backward bending supply curve. But that's not where most people are, right? So when we think about a supply curve for labor, we want to be thinking mostly about this: the upward sloping supply curve, like I have over here. Okay, standard upward sloping supply curve. And then on some future videos, we got to put that standard supply curve together with a demand curve for labor and start working with our supply and demand model. All right, this has been Mr. Hagan on another podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next podcast.